What is Micah Parsons saying after this game? And did we mince his words up? Because that's what he's saying the media does. They minced up my words.
So first of all, there's never any no comment with Micah Parsons, which I can't complain. I mean, for our job, you love that. So that's not happening. There's a reason he has his own podcast, and he does it during the week. And I don't think there's a lot of players that would do that. And I don't think there's a lot of teams that want their star players doing that, but it is the Cowboys, so that's part of it. And so this is some good promotion for his podcast later today. But with that being said, it's hard to, whether you read that quote or you listen to it and not thinking it's taking a little bit of a shot at Mike McCarthy, especially because of where he's at, final year of his contract. The team's obviously struggling. I don't think he meant it. I don't think he meant it as harshly as it sounds. But if you're Mike McCarthy and you hear that, there's no way you're pleased by that. And I get what he's saying about, Zach Martin putting in the work on the field as a player. Mike McCarthy's never played in the NFL, but he's a longtime NFL head coach. He's one of the winningest coaches in the NFL. He's won a Super Bowl. He's obviously put in a lot of work. And so I just don't think the timing's great for that. But that clip right there is exactly what the Dallas Cowboys are. Like, even when things aren't going well, there's always something else that comes along with it. And most teams aren't like that. Usually when most teams are 3-6, you stop talking about them. With the Cowboys, oftentimes nationally especially, they get leaned into.
Yeah, but John, it seems to me that a lot of people are saying that Mike McCarthy may have lost the locker room. To me, if anyone asks me a question about my head coach, even after a loss, I'm going to defend him if I know the effort, the time, everything that he puts in. You'll find ways to defend him. But to me, I thought that these comments by Micah Parsons were kind of indicative on what's going on behind the scenes in Dallas, that this is a locker room that may have lost faith in its head coach.
Yeah, and I can easily see how it would be interpreted that way, especially with the way that they're playing on the field. So, he has the right to clear that up. But with that clip, it's hard to sit there and say anyone's completely taking it out of context because of everything you just said. Things aren't going well. And so you're specifically asked about your head coach who is in the final year of his deal. That's not really what you want to hear if you're the coach or heck, if you're the front office or your other players in the locker room. I mean, that's arguably your most valuable player saying that. And so it's not a great look. And I'm interested to see what Micah says to try and clarify it. But to your point, maybe that is an example of things behind the scenes being worse than we think right now, because there haven't been many players that have said anything that along those lines to make you think that. But the product on the field looks that way, especially the product at home. I mean,
Right.
There isn't a team. How do you go from winning 16 consecutive games over a 2 periods, and then all of a sudden you get blown out by the Packers in the playoffs and you've never recovered from that, and then you just continue to get blown out at home? Like the switch like that, no one in the Cowboys organization been able to put their finger on it, and that's the biggest question, and no one has an answer for it.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. We're talking to Jon Machota, Dallas Cowboys beat writer for The Athletic. I'm glad you brought that up. Is that it's not as if they lose games bad on the road, right? They're getting beat up at home. Like, you're supposed to be able to defend home, and they're not doing that. But that being said, John, with the news that Dak Prescott will end the season on IR, this is now a Cooper Rush, Trey Lance football team. I'm not so sure they can show me enough that Mike McCarthy will be awarded possibly another season, or they re-sign him back as the head coach. So I say, what are the Cowboys possibly playing for now at 3-6? Yes, I've seen teams come back from 3-6, but I don't know if this team has the ability to. So what am I looking at now with the Cowboys sort of moving forward?
Yeah, there's no reason for anybody to think that they're all of a sudden going to turn this around. This has been heading in this direction for a while. And again, to your point, like, there's levels to this. These aren't close losses where they're just not, a different play here and one less turnover there. Their last 2 home games, they've turned the ball over 5 times in each game. And so I understand that the Lions won last night doing that, that's very unconventional. You're not gonna win many games doing that. And so you have that going on. So it's then the fact that you want to go with the storyline of Cooper Rush is won games for them in the past.
Right.
But those teams in the past had a better defense. They had a run game. This team doesn't have that. There's no real signs to think that they're going to win any more than maybe 4 or 5 games this season. You look at the rest of the schedule, they got the Giants and they got the Panthers. Those are their 2 most winnable games. They should win those even with this team, but you can't tell me that that's even guaranteed. And beyond that, they won't be picked to win any of those other games, and they could get just as ugly as what the game was yesterday.
Well, what about next week in the battle of the state of Texas, right? Dallas Cowboys at home taking on the Houston Texans. Okay, that's the one where it's always been what the Cowboys have been, right? Big brother, and Houston Texans, your little brother. That's how Monday Night Football kind of feels like next week, John, that this could be one of those games where some decisions will have to be made, because I don't know what the Cowboys kind of do going forward the rest of the season. This is still a brand, but when you're putting that type of product out and you're looking at a team that has a young quarterback in CJ Stroud, I know they lost last night, but they've have an opportunity. They're going in the right direction, and yet the Cowboys may be going in the opposite direction. I think their next game is probably the most critical game of the season. If you win it, you're kind of still in it. You lose it, it's all about next season now.
Yeah. In terms of the first part of your question about, the big brother, little brother, I will say that just because it's pro football and the team, the players, everybody changes so much, it isn't the same as, Michigan State, Florida State.
Okay.
But for Jerry Jones, it'll bother him a lot if they get destroyed by the other team in state in his building again. So that is one of those things where it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to that, because clearly the Texans are a better team right now. And there's no reason why anyone should pick the Cowboys to beat them. But I don't get the sense that there'll be many storylines from the players talking about how this is some big rivalry or anything like that. I think they're pretty frustrated that they can't get a win, that this thing is sliding in the wrong direction. They are getting some players back healthy, but the problem is even early on in the season, when they did have just about everybody, they were still getting blown out. And the worst one really is that game against the Saints. You got blown out at home against the Saints. You had all of these players we're talking about that were injured or are coming back. They were out there. You got destroyed by the Saints, and they were the first team to fire their head coach, and for a period of time didn't win another game until they fired their coach after that. And so that's the one that will stand out, of where there's really no coming back from that. I understand sports, crazy things happen. There's nothing crazy, Pat, that's about to change with this Cowboys season.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku Channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.